I've got your energy stories for the last week of May 2022. And in the first one, a company called Joby Aviation, an electric air vehicle company, just got critical certification from the Federal Aviation Administration to start on-demand commercial air taxi operations, an Uber in the sky, if you will. The company has articulated a goal of having an electric aerial rideshare service by 2024, taking passengers in vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. The company's only built 2 prototypes and still needs 2 other FAA certifications in order to operate. Coming back to Earth a bit, some good news from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, which estimated that EVs and fuel cell vehicles, the latter's so small it barely moves the needle, helped to avoid the combustion of nearly 1.5 million barrels of oil per day last year, representing about 3.3% of global demand. That's not nothing, and it's a number that will rise in future years, especially if we keep on hearing the steady drumbeat of new EV and battery factory announcements, such as the 2 last week from Hyundai and Stellantis here in the United States. Hyundai announced an agreement with the state of Georgia to build an EV and battery plant in that state capable of supporting about 300,000 vehicles per year. The plant should start in 2025. No battery production figures were provided, but it's got to be somewhere in the range of 20 gigawatt hours if the batteries per vehicle are somewhere in the 60 to 80 kilowatt hour range, which is pretty standard for a sedan these days. Meanwhile, Stellantis and battery company Samsung SDI are planning on a massive EV battery plant in Indiana, starting annual production there in 2025 with 23 gigawatt hours, expanding potentially up to 33 gigawatt hours. These are only 2 of an estimated 300 battery gigafactories globally that Benchmark Minerals reports as being in planning or construction phases. Total annual capacity is on the order of 6,388 gigawatt hours, up 68% from 2021. North America and Europe are still way behind China. However, Europe and North America are putting the electric pedal to the metal, having announced 8 and 11 new gigafactories respectively in the past year. North American auto OEMs are really stepping it up. 14 of 23 North American factories in the pipeline are either entirely or jointly owned by automakers. Benchmark also warns that the factory side of the equation is growing much more quickly, about twice the pace, than the upstream mineral mining and processing services sector. And Benchmark CEO Simon Moores commented on Twitter this month that, quote, something drastic needs to happen to close this gap if one of the key pillars of the energy transition is to exist at scale. Ironically, although the U.S. possesses some of the world's richest lithium resources, it has only 1 operating mine, producing less than 2% of global production. But the Department of Defense intends to do something about that, has proposed to Congress that the definition of the, quote, domestic source be changed in the Defense Production Act to include not just Canada, which it does today, but also U.S. allies, the UK and Australia. Meanwhile, also in the transportation space, French gas company Air Liquide just opened its largest, 30 tons per day, liquid hydrogen production and logistics facility in Nevada to supply hydrogen-fueled vehicles. It will use landfill gas as the feedstock for the project. Switching to wind, researchers estimate that approximately 43 million tons of turbine blades will be discarded globally by 2050. So what to do with them? Well, Veolia is now operating a plant in Missouri that shreds 250 blades monthly, with 60 to 80 tons of blade materials loaded onto dump trucks and sent daily to U.S. cement manufacturers. About 75% of that pulverized material is used as silicon and concrete, and the other 25% as fuel in the place of coal. Even with transportation, there's a net environmental benefit. They'll be improved in the future if more plants are built and spread out across the U.S. so blades and crushed materials don't have to be shipped that far. And finally, the U.S. Supreme Court last week let stand the Biden administration's social cost of carbon estimates that are applied during consideration of new federal regulations. 20 Republican states had tried to block the move to revive and update cost estimates from the Obama administration, and the figure was bumped up from the $10 per ton of carbon used during the Trump era to a value closer to $50 a ton today. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.